Hi there, poetry buffs, and welcome to Bush Slam. This is the show that puts poets and poetry in motion across Australia. I'm H.D. Nelson at the wheel of the good ship Slam, setting off in search of a lively sea shanty. Yes, Bush Slam this week drops anchor in Stanley, a town that nestles in the shadow of the Nut, the core of an ancient volcano. Now, poetry, it's as simple as the fork. All you need is a blank sheet of paper, a pencil, a rubber, and an idea. And our Bush Slammers this week have to capture the spirit and essence of Stanley on their bit of paper, and then the tricky bit, perform it before the people of the town for a big thumbs up or a thumbs down. Blue-collar balladeer Geoff Goodfellow needs every sharp chisel in the poet's toolbox to get an edge on his well-travelled opponent.
I'm a working-class boy from the inner northern suburbs of Adelaide. I grew up in an area where there were no poets living in our street. There were plumbers, there were carpenters, joiners. There was a lot of colour in the street that I lived in, and I think that a lot of lives haven't been recorded, and I've set out to record those very ordinary lives of people like my own.
Geoff's opponent at the Stanley Slam Summit is the bard from the bush, James Blundell, who's not slow when penning a hit tune.
The ingredients to a good song, from my perspective, are a bit of an alchemy between reality, in fact, and romance. I think it's a dry dissertation of fact can sound like a history lesson. To me, the criteria is there has to be something to anchor it to, otherwise you just, you know... And then you can write a completely fanciful song, so I've contradicted myself instantly. There are no rules.
James, I brought you to my special spot here in the Stanley. It's the Nut. And what's most important about the Nut, poetically speaking, is the Doppelmayr chairlift.
I just think it's incredible.
And I must say, the whole idea of coming all this way and finding this enormous bit of machinery here seems just perplexing.
When you see the rest of Stanley,
yeah,
they've got something that turns, look at it.
And the rest of Stanley, very low tech. Yeah. But here, of course, we've gone way over the top. And what's wrong with walking up the Nut?
Well, see, this is the other thing. I've seen people walking, which makes me think they know something we don't about this.
Or they're idiots. Well, look, James, it's tremendous to have you on the chairlift at last, because when we said we were going to Stanley, the Nut chairlift I marked at the top of the list of things to do. And as you come up here, of course, this fantastic vista in front of us, never mind what's behind it, I think the view behind us is absolute rubbish. Well, this is your money shot here, James. I mean, look at it. What a great part of Australia. I mean, I can see an Australian Wolves football field, and even though we're a fair way from it, I don't feel excluded at all.
No, not at all. These are the cheap seats, but you can yell, you know. Good one.
Yeah. You know, from up here, you know, is there anything that sticks out? I mean, I'm not quite sure where you draw inspiration from, but can you see all the bit like that poem of Dylan Thomas, Under Milkwood? Well, you know, where you can be somewhere and see all the bits that mattered.
No, look, it's just... It's a hamlet, and that is, yeah.
Well, that's what it is.
It's very thespian straight away.
Yeah, straight away. A nut and a hamlet, you know. Poetry. Well, James and I are topside on the Nut. Geoff has heard the siren song of the sea and locks horns with DARRYL Stafford, who makes his living from the tricky deep.
Stanley, for you, what does it mean to you?
Well, God's own country.
Yeah. Does it all revolve around tourism, do you think, here?
Oh, no. Tourism's a fairly big part of it, but the main part is the fishing industry and the farming and... Yeah.
And what are the fishermen pulling in here? What sort of fish?
Oh, mainly crayfishing industry, octopus, shark.
What about these sills? Where are we going to spot them?
Well, we've got a colony out here, which is called Bull Rock.
Right.
When I first came out here, I came out with a fisherman. They were doing a documentary on tourism. And I said to the fisherman, I said, why don't we go and have a look at the seals? And he said, who wants to come and see seals? And I said, well, I do. Yeah. And that created a job for me, so, and I love it, and it's a good lifestyle.
Geoff's poetry champions society's hardest workers. But how did this champ of the building site get started in the verse caper? Geoff, you got into the poetry caper because you buggered your back.
The back problem happened in about '82. I ruptured a couple of discs in my spine. I was told by an orthopaedic specialist that unless I had no back operation, I wouldn't walk again. Yeah. I refused the operation, signed myself out of hospital, went home, crawled around on my hands and knees, and through boredom one day, And the fact that I had nothing to do, I saw this book lying on the floor, was face down. I flipped the book over and looked at it, and it was poetry. I thought, poetry? I'm too tough to read poetry. And I thought, well, no one's going to see me, I'll read it. So I took the book to bed, I read it from cover to cover, and after reading it, I thought, well, I reckon I could have a crack at this myself. This could be my go.
Then out of the blue, you were struck by the big sea.
That's right.
How did the poetry change after the cancer scare?
My voice was a big booming voice, and now it's no longer the big booming voice. And I've had to redirect the energy that I would put on the page in a different fashion. I'm probably a quieter, more reflective poet now, and I think the new material from the forthcoming manuscript, Waltzing with Jack Dancer, will definitely reflect that.
What takes your fancy so far? What can you see as...
Well, I did encounter a problem early on. I'm having a little trouble working ski lift into anything. I've got miffed and lover's tip and a few, and that's not taking me anywhere. But the other thing is, I think one of the things that I'm adamant about over the years is that the point is to take one idea and embellish it as opposed to squashing in 50 or 60 different things. So start with sense of location and then find the story that imbues that initial setup.
With day one fading, our slammers are on the job. 2 days now remain before they engage in word-to-word combat on the main stage of the Stanley Hotel.
It's impossible to come into Stanley and not be made aware of the story of Patrick Hersey. At 20 years of age, Patrick was ordered to sea to effect a rescue on a lone kayaker who'd got into trouble. They thought 5 miles offshore. It turned out to be 18 miles offshore. It's a tragedy, there's no doubt about it, but this is a fishing village and the sea is a very demanding mistress.
He's about 19 there.
Yeah.
That's the boat he was lost on there.
Yeah. Do you just tell me the story?
Well, basically, it was the whole operation was mucked up from start to finish, you know. And they had got an aircraft to come down from Sale in Victoria, and that had 2 big survival craft hooked to 800 metres of rope. He come down and seen Patrick's boat, and he didn't know he was looking for a canoe, and he shot this thing right across the bow of Patrick, went through underneath the Moyans and fouled the propeller. She's laying head up to the weather, and it's just like a big hinge, and it threw her over on her back. And then things got really wrong after that. They brought another boat up to try and rescue him, but he disappeared just before he could actually rescue him. The whole thing, you know, I was very bitter at the time, but it was just a bad organisation from start to finish, you know.
Particularly be crippled by rescue. I mean, that's just, yeah, that's ridiculous.
Sea rescue here is pretty good now, but my word, it was bad in those days. It was bad.
The amazing thing to me is always that the disparity between the folklore of a story and the reality of it. Until I spoke to James and Bella, that there's no thought in the Patrick Hersey story that it was a series of disasters that led to his drowning. That's really what the guts of a story, if you're going to write it, will be. There's so much to the Patrick Hersey story that I am actually loath to take it on in a short period of time. I just want to go away and think about it, to be honest. And every so often I know for sure that you're going to wind up writing a song about a particular issue, and I'm absolutely sure that this will wind up as a piece of work.
With James running on empty and the clock ticking, Geoff seeks local knowledge, ducking into the front bar of the pub. Well, Geoff, here we are in the Stanley Hotel. Now, this is your sort of, this is a mine for you, really, where you come in here and you often eavesdrop on conversations and hack nuggets of gold out of the conversations that you have.
That's it, you've said it for me. I don't have to say it now.
Yeah, fair enough.
What has grabbed me about Stanley is the unusual architecture, and I suppose I've spent years in the building game, and I enjoy architecture. I like driving up and down the main street of Stanley and looking at the contrast of houses, the contrast of building styles, the use of weatherboard, the use of stone, bluestone, and brick, and there's an unusual mix here. You know, there's one constant, and that's corrugated iron roofs, and also the nature of the nut. How it stands out, and you know, and I like wordplay too. I like playing around with the possibilities of language and what words can essentially lead to, other than what they're supposed to represent.
The poems of yours that I've read, they're very short. The lines are very short. I mean,
Lines
you know,
are short, yeah.
So what
They're
happens?
like little left jabs.
Good on you, well done.
I see, you know, poetry like little left jab, and then you get to the end, and bang, you knock them out with
a big punch.
With a big punch, yeah. Working class people are yarn spinners. They sit around at lunchtime, they go wah, wah, wah. Everyone's Captain Have a Chat. Everyone tells a story, and I guess I'm from an Irish Catholic background too, and the spoken word counted.
And that's only really a medium-sized marrow. They grow a lot bigger than that.
Suddenly, day 2 is done and dusted, and little poetry has been plonked onto the page. Tomorrow is the big day. Both poets have to bang out 2 minutes of literary mayhem when the slam erupts at sunset.
Welcome to Highfield.
What a
James.
beautiful place, Liz. It's just lovely.
Gorgeous spot, yeah.
What's the history?
It was the headquarters for the Van Diemen's Land Company. So this, from here, they had 350,000 acres of land to graze sheep on, basically.
A big block of dirt.
Big block of dirt. Didn't pan out as well as they thought. They were only here for about 30 years, and then the house was sold to a number of different owners, and it's now owned by the state government.
Did they keep the place going as a station, as a property?
The next owners, they went more into beef cattle, which is a lot more suited to the climate conditions here as well. Yep.
Cool. Can we go and have a look?
You can, come this way. Okay, so do you want to hear a spooky story, James? Yeah. In the early 90s, they were doing some work on the ceiling here, and these workmen come in one morning and they saw these little child's footprints that went all the way down this hallway, right round the corner into the dining room, and they stopped dead right in front of the fireplace.
Any idea who the child was?
We think it was probably Juliana Kerr. She was accidentally killed on the property in 1834. So we're not 100% sure, but it sort of fits the bill.
And how was she killed? What happened?
She's in a little cart harnessed to a dog, and they used to take turns riding around in that, but something's distracted the dog and he's ran through one of the post and rail fences, and she was thrown out of the cart and hit her head on the fence. Died instantly.
Jeez. And has she been a presence in the house since the accident, or was there a long period of time before she started to...?
It's mostly since the restoration work has started. We've found the more restoration work we've done, the lighter the energy has felt, so we haven't sort of seen her around or felt her presence for a long time, so we think she's maybe happy with what we're doing.
So, I was going to say, she's not throwing things around.
That's right. So this is where the footprints come through, and they led right up here, up to the end of this fireplace here.
Does history relate why she would have come here? Was this a family room or something?
This was the dining room, so I guess this is where they had family meals and whatnot.
And it's the dog? Any history on the dog? Did it have a name? Or?
No, I'm not sure any news on the dog. I don't think the dog would have lived much longer after the accident anyway. But she is buried on site here. She's got a lovely memorial out in the garden.
The death of a child is always a massive tragedy. I'm a parent, and that gets you straight away. The way she died is just one of those things. It's just a tragic accident. But the fact that 170 years later her story is remembered, and that she had the character to come and haunt people is, from my perspective, is just priceless. There's so much to talk about in there that it's a great place to start.
With the sands of the hourglass running out, James seizes on the story of Juliana's death in the overturned dog cart. What have we got in here? We got octopus. What's happening to the
Octopus, mate.
octopus?
Well, you're going to talk to the workers, talk to the troops, and give them a poem. I reckon that workers deserves poetry too.
Very good. Well, let's roll on in.
Okay.
Let's go through these licorice paper here. Fantastic. Look at that.
Nothing like a bit of steamed octopus.
There's a poem in that, Geoff, isn't there?
I reckon there's a lot of poems in that. Well, going to work sites allows me the opportunity to get into people's heads and to ask particular questions and to observe what they're doing manually too, and to be able to write about that in a way that I can show it to other people. I think everyone needs a bit of dignity in their working life, and I think that I can give a bit of dignity back to those people by writing about working lives. I mean, I necessarily mightn't trade off a lot of stuff that I saw today in the fish factory, but it gives me an insight into another facet of working life in Australia. And trapped in a tower where noise repeats, no sound comes in, no echo retreats. And there they toil the 10-hour day and nurse their aches and earn their pay. And at knock-off time, they shuffle away down Swanson Street, up Swanson Street.
Don't you get any ideas here that stops?
Okay, we're going to pull up now, we're going to have a strike. I declare that the rest of the day is a half-day holiday. You can all go home, it's full whack from the boss. And if there's any trouble, we'll bag him on ABC.
Well, James, how far have you got?
I've got a piece. This is that's never a given, so that's a start. And yeah, I'm actually really happy with it.
What's your first line?
The first line is, Stanley huddles quietly in the shelter of the nut. The nut's back in.
Fantastic. Give me that again, Stanley.
Stanley huddles quietly in the shelter of the nut.
Perfect. Now, look, he's pretty confident. Your opponent.
Oh, look, I reckon I'm going to get wiped tonight.
Yeah.
I have a very high regard for him.
Yeah.
I've seen him. He has a voracious uptake. You just see everything's going in. I know he will be a no holds barred kind of performance, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm absolutely fascinated to see what he's written, but I reckon he's going to be pretty tough competition.
Well, why don't you grab your guitar and then give us a read of it first without the music, and then try and set it to music for us.
Indeed. Hang on a sec. Actually, it's a kind of fun thing because the read is Stanley huddles quietly in the shelter of the nut. Perfect ripples run aground in Sawyer Bay. A zephyr skims high cloud across a pale Wedgwood sky where Juliana's footsteps found the fire. So hopefully that's intriguing enough to go, well, who the hell's Juliana and where's she walking? But then when you put it to music, and this is one of those devices where, because it's quite a dark piece of oratory, then you put it to a lively sort of tune and it's, slightly deceptive. Actually it goes. Stanley huddles quietly in the shelter of the nut. Perfect ripples run aground in Sawyer Bay. A zephyr skims high cloud across a pale Wedgwood sky where Juliana's footsteps found the fire. So, yeah.
Fantastic. That's really good. Okay, the nut itself, the rock itself, towers over this joint.
Yeah, it's
Is that where you've started?
That's my starting point, like you drive into this joint, you know that you're coming into somewhere. I mean, you can see from a long way off that you're coming into Stanley. It looks like a big head's coming up to get you, and the closer I got to it, the more I saw that it was an old man's head, and I thought it's Stanley. He's the man, Stan's the man.
How does the opening line run there, Nia?
Hey, Stanley, you put your head up a long time ago, many miles before I got to town.
Perfect. Now, the big stoush isn't far away. I think you can take him. How you feeling?
Well, I've been training. I got up this morning and I did 60 push-ups and 60 sit-ups, and I've been rolling the shoulders this afternoon, and I think that I'm ready to go. I'm going to give away a few pounds, and I'm coming back from Jack Dancer of the Nanny Goat, but I think that I can take this bloke.
Hello, Stanley, and welcome to Bushland! And now, can you please give a warm Stanley welcome to the man who's making his return to the Bush Slam ring after a bout with cancer? Can you please go crazy and you reduce yourselves to rubble as you welcome Mr. Geoff Goodfellow!
Sit on your Stanley. I love you. Settle down. This poem's called Heads and Tails.
Stanley, your head was raised a long time ago, many miles before I got to town. Stanley, you are a hard old man with a crew cut, but you're a monumental contradiction too. You've got a face as hard as a rock, but you've got your soft spots too. Stanley, you drive me nuts. Especially in winter when windswept Wharf Road washes out onto Bass Strait. And you know about straits, don't you, Stanley? You know there's not a single gay person in this town. Except perhaps for that bloke who was scratching his own nuts in the front bar earlier tonight. Or maybe that lemon who lives in the lime-coloured cottage high on the hill. But we'll stay quiet about getting high, won't we? We all know there's no drugs in Stanley. At least that's what the fisherman told me. And everyone knows they don't tell porcupines. But you are more than just the sum of all that, Stanley. Looking down from Highfield House, you're a hat band of houses. You're colour and contrast, timber and stone, bluestone and brick. You're a world of dormer windows and iron roofs that run down to the sea. Stanley, you must be the true fisherman's friend. Nutty as it sounds. You're out there as a sentinel, watching over the ocean. And when the east winds blow and Bass Strait erupts, you're there to signal the boats back in. Stanley, you are an enterprising old bugger. And even though you're a bit rough around the edges, for me, you'll always hold your head up high. Thank you. Good on you. Good on you. Thank you.
Geoff Goodfellow there, ladies and gentlemen, returning to the ring, the Bush Slam ring, after a bout with cancer. And now our second contestant tonight on Bush Slam here in Stanley. He's a man who's travelled the length and breadth and never, ever been to the nut before. Can you make him welcome a nut virgin, Mr. James Blundell?
It's nice to be a virgin, isn't it? Little romance in this one. When, as a writer, you find something of intrigue, and I was taken completely by the story of Juliana Kerr. This poem's called Juliana's Footsteps. Stanley huddles quietly in the shelter of the nut. Perfect ripples run aground in Sawyer Bay. A zephyr skims high cloud across a pale Wedgwood sky, where Juliana's footsteps found the fire. Juliana Kerr had not reached 3 years old at Highfield House set broad upon the hill. While racing in a tiny cart pulled by the family dog, her head struck timber hard and she was killed. They buried Juliana in the gardens that she loved. 160 years stole slowly by, until centuries of stillness proved too much to bear and Juliana's footsteps found the fire. Highfield House was pulled back out of ruin. Sanding dust lay thick upon the floor. The first man to unlock the door one morning stood stock still, shocked by what lay before him, a trail of perfect footprints belonging to a child. From vestibule down hallway dark and wide, etched in the residue of resurrection, Juliana's footsteps found the fire. At the hearth that warmed the room where all had met to eat, her destination seemingly acquired, all signs of passage vanished in the long-lost heat. Juliana's footsteps found the fire. There's darkness wound round Juliana's tale, its seed and foreign folly. Juliana's father, Edward Kerr, chief agent of Van Diemen's Land Company, swung an iron fist, a harsh, intolerant man. Over-fond of flogging and underwhelmed with his new land, fate stole a daughter from him and brought to naught his plans to tame a willful country that he didn't understand. But time erases tyrants, brutal footprints fade. The one thing that is commonly recalled is the spirit of a little girl that wouldn't be repressed, who sought warmth in a house empty and cold. Stanley huddles quietly in the shelter of the nut. Perfect ripples run aground in Sawyer Bay. A zephyr skims high cloud across a pale Wedgwood sky, where Juliana's footsteps found the fire. Where Juliana's footsteps found the fire. Thank you very much.
And now, the climax of Bush Slam, ladies and gentlemen, Stanley. Did you think the man in the blue corner, Mr. Geoff Goodfellow, was the winner? Or did you think the heavyweight weighing in at 160 kilos, Mr. James Blundell, was the winner? Sadly, by a process of exhaustion, I give the Boughton Stanley to Mr. Geoff Goodfellow!
Which poem did you like?
Geoff's.
Why?
I think he caught the humour of Stanley, and they like a laugh, and he put that to them, so good fun.
I like James's.
I like Geoff's.
Why did you like James's?
Because I love James.
Actually, I thought both of them were pretty good. I like the guy that had the cancer, but James Blundell really put the history together properly.
I like Geoff's.
Why?
Because it was more about Stanley.
I'd rather Geoff over James. It was to the heart.
Geoff's poem was more real to the probably town because I actually forgot about the Highfield story, to be quite honest.
Definitely James's. It picked just the one element and really sort of hit the heartstrings.